Hi everyone and welcome back. Today we're going to look at the question, why do I have to make things so hard for myself? Now, as I've looked back on my life, I can see so many times where I have made things so hard for myself, harder than I need to be. I think I'm not alone in this. I'm not sure why this is. Maybe it could be because of my perfectionist nature, my Enneagram 1 part of me who likes to improve things and make things as good as they could be. It could be down to my sort of athlete mentality where performance and achievement doesn't feel fulfilling unless it's been really hard and I really had to break through some things. So I'm sure I'm not, as I said, I'm sure I'm not alone in this, but this has really sort of come to the fore for me for two reasons. One, because of my chronic fatigue condition, meaning that I've got less energy now to be able to do things, so I've got to make that energy count. So making things hard for me isn't going to help at all. And the second thing, I've been prompted, as you know in previous videos, by the book Effortless, to look at things and try and make them as effortless as possible, which is the opposite of making them as hard as possible. So today we're going to look at 3 characteristics that might be contributing to us making life so hard for ourselves. So let's get into point 1. So the first thing I'd like to suggest is all around the concept I call building without instructions. So when you get a parcel through, or you've got a new gadget or something new, what do? Do you immediately get the packaging and just rip it off and try and process what to do? Do you open the packaging up and lay everything out so you can see what's in the packaging and how it can relate? Or do you do something similar to what I've just described and then get the instructions and read them through before you begin to, I don't know, load the gadget that you've got or begin to play with it or whatever it is? Now for me, I tend to get something, open up the packaging, get the item and try and figure out what to do. Now obviously, I suppose, as I'm saying this to myself and to you guys on camera, the obvious thing would be to get the instructions and to look what to do. But I don't think I do that very often, and I'm sure not many of us do. But that's surely the easiest way and the most effortless way to look at the instructions, follow them and plug them in. So why don't we look at the instructions? Well, I think there's probably 2 things to bear in mind in this. The first one is the whole aspect of hurry. I think we're so excited or so in a rush to be able to do something, we want to just get into it and hurry through. I think we live our lives too much in a hurry nowadays. So when we get anything or want to do anything, we kind of make it hard for ourselves because we just rush on through and try and make it happen without looking at the instructions. The second thing on this point really is I think we have a bit of a superhero complex, in the sense that instructions feel a little bit as though that's a bit of a weakness. We don't need to look at that. We know what to do. We can sort this and work it through. But what happens is it just ends up being harder for ourselves. So that's my reflection. My point 1 is that we tend to not build with instructions. We tend to want to hurry it through or be a bit of a superhero with it and just push on through, but in the end we make it hard for ourselves. So my second suggestion as a contributing factor is the fact that we don't have clarity or total clarity over our goal or direction that we want to head. Now I'm always reminded of my childhood and the film Alice in Wonderland and the interaction between the Cheshire Cat and Alice when she's trying to find which direction to go. So she asks the cat, which direction shall I go? And the cat comes back to her and says, well, where are you heading? Where do you want to get to? And Alice says, well, I don't really mind where I want to get to. And therefore the cat comes back and says, well, it doesn't matter which direction you want to go. And sometimes that's how we live our lives, with no clear clarity or direction. And we can end up going around in circles or just not really getting anywhere because we haven't got a clarity, we're happy to go this way or that way. And what happens is we feel that we're losing energy without going anywhere, and therefore it feels hard. So perhaps I think that's really a key contributing factor. I've mentioned it in some other videos as well. Just a key requirement to know the direction you're heading and to get clarity on the goal that you're shooting for or aiming for. So that's point 2. The third factor to consider in all of this is the fear factor. And fear displays itself in different ways for each of us, but I'm just going to give a couple of examples of how that relates to making things harder for ourselves. So the first thing is just fear of not being perceived how we want to be, and that by making things harder, people will view us really well because we've achieved something that's really hard. So I kind of linked to this and mentioned this at the beginning, but I suppose at the end of the day, taking a really silly example like opening a can, if you can open the can with your bare hands, that people will perceive you, wow, that's amazing. But you can open a can with a can opener with less effort and the result is still the same. You still opened a can. So sometimes it's the fear of the fear that we're not going to be perceived how we want to be or as successful as we want to be, that can lead us to making things harder for ourselves. The second example is asking people for help. Now, over the years, I've struggled with doing this. Maybe being an only child and wanting to prove myself, I kind of go down the route of, right, I want to try this out myself, work it through myself. Even if it's the hardest thing, I'll keep going until I've got it. And there is a certain value in that in terms of perseverance. But you can then ask people for help and make that process easier, have people alongside you to show you how to do it so that you can learn the skill. So rather than an either or, I do it myself or others will help, it's a both and, where you need to combine the two, be persevering things but get people alongside with the expertise that we can learn and grow from at the end of the day. And a final fear, I think, is around vulnerability. Any time where we don't know what we're doing or are perceived that we don't know what we're doing, we seem vulnerable, and we don't like to display that to other people. It's a fear, and therefore from that things just get harder and harder. So I hope that's helpful. So the third thing that really can contribute to us making things harder for ourselves is the aspect of fear. So to sum up, 3 contributing factors of why we tend to make things so hard for ourselves. The first one is we try and do things without instructions. We hurry things. We have a bit of a superhero complex. So to counteract that, build with instructions. Take the easiest or simplest route you can. The second factor is having a lack of clarity around your goals and direction. So to offset that, spend some time getting clarity and knowing where you're heading. And the third factor, fear, whether that's fear of feeling vulnerable or asking for help or not looking as good as you want to, then actually it's all about being authentic and just showing some vulnerability, not looking as good, and do ask for help from people. So on to my one last thing. And if you can relate to some of the things that I've said today, then similar to me, you probably have this kind of soundtrack in your head which says when you approach a certain situation or life each day, you think, oh, actually I need to make this hard for myself, or how do I make it harder? Well, it's important to acknowledge that and capture that soundtrack and realise that it's going on in your brain, and try and find different ways to be able to counter that soundtrack and play a different one. So one of the ways of doing this is inverting the question, and as I've mentioned before, this has come out in this book, Effortless, and one of the key, if you like, take homes for me from the book. And so we can invert the question, why does this need to be so hard, to how do I make it easier for myself? And then once you do that, you're able to maybe produce a different soundtrack in your head and look at thinking, well, actually I'm going to approach this situation in the most easiest way possible rather than make it hard for myself. So I hope that's helpful. Capture that soundtrack in your head and change the soundtrack. So there we have it. I hope this video has been a blessing to you and will lead you to be more fruitful. Please subscribe to this channel and share this video so others can benefit from the content. A couple of other videos will be coming up on the screen now that will be related to the subject I've just talked about. So I hope you have a look at those and are blessed by those. And remember, be fruitful, and I'll see you in the next video.